So y'all really liked the soprano video, huh? I'm a micro channel, okay? That's a lot of views for me. Hello darlings, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Robin Hahn, I am an opera singer and director, and today we're going to explain all the mezzo-ish operatic voice types. Because I'm listening to everything you're telling me in the comments, and what I'm hearing is that this needs to be a series. That means I'm now going down the registers from top to bottom. Today it's mezzos, next eventually it will be tenors, and then basses and baritones, with hopefully a final video at the end with just audio examples as a companion to the series. Get it? Got it? Good. Let's begin. Like I did last time, I have made us a handy dandy chart to follow along with right here. Oh my god, what is that? Whatever, we're making do with what we've got. Now, last time, I don't quite remember what I did, but I think we started from the y-axis and worked our way over. But given the particular complexities of the mezzo-ish voice types, I think it may be easier to specifically start at the vague top of this range and work our way down. Which means we're starting with Zwischenfach. I'm starting with what may essentially be the biggest can of worms I could possibly open up in this video, because of course I am. Okay, so in many places of the world, including in Germany, Dr. Rudolf Stoiber's Handbuch der Oper remains the sort of inarguable Bible of operatic Fächer, and according to this admittedly extremely useful and completely amazing book, Zwischenfach isn't a thing. But do y'all remember what I said was wrong with the Fach system in my other video? That it is inherently a system of boxes, and humans don't always fall into them? Yeah, that. Zwischenfach is an increasingly recognized Fach these days to denote a voice that simply doesn't fit neatly into the box labeled mezzo or the box labeled soprano. The word Zwischenfach is German and literally does mean between voice types. Zwischen meaning between, and Fach in this case literally meaning voice type. Obviously though, by that definition, anyone between any two Fächer can be Zwisch, and yes, they can! It's just that this word is mostly being recognized specifically between sopranos and mezzos and not really between any other Fächer. So if you hear the word used, it's usually referring just to someone between those two voice types. Now, I have never been Zwischen, but in my experience, the majority of Zwisch people I've met, like Mel of So Biased, who helped with writing the script of this video and is probably already down in the comments being an awesome cheerleader, and you should totally check out her historical sewing content, link in the card. Mostly do end up singing mezzo repertoire, but have an upper extension. That means they often can sing some soprano roles as well. As Mel says, she quote, can visit soprano land, but doesn't want to live there. These voices can also often be bigger voices, and that's why the dot isn't actually that close to the y-axis. In fact, a lot of people who identify as some form of Zwisch sing a lot of dramatic mezzo repertoire, and then when they do cross over into soprano land, they likewise sing dramatic soprano repertoire as well. But that's not the only type of Zwischenfach person. In fact, because Zwischenfach is a German word, we find that in other places in the world, other systems for categorizing soprano-ish / mezzo-ish people have popped up in other places. For example, in the Italian system, you may hear of a colbran mezzo-soprano or a falcon mezzo-soprano. These are specific words for specific type of Zwischenfach people that are just increasingly being recognized in other parts of the world, but they do all fall under the sort of Zwischenfach umbrella, so I'm putting them in here. It's important to note, though, that many regions don't use the word Zwischenfach at all. It's not like the word has been codified or anything. On top of the many and varied different types of Zwischenfach mezzos, I do also know of people who are mostly sopranos in terms of range, but their color is dark enough and big enough near the bottom to be audible and believable in some of the mezzo repertoire as well. Usually in the pants roles, or perhaps the roles that already straddle the divide between mezzo and soprano. Those people can also be classified as Zwischenfach, and depending where they are in the world, may have more specific words to describe their Fach. Now, the operatic world definitely pressures people who identify as some form of Zwischenfach to pick one. At least they are pressured to identify mostly as a mezzo or a soprano, and then they just kind of jump over the line occasionally. What they choose to identify with, though, is mostly up to what feels right to the singer's voice and what kind of roles they can get cast in without injuring themselves. This is the type of Fach that makes it feel like this entire video, heck, this entire series, is completely irrelevant. But what you need to know is this. For most people who are Zwisch, you may not be able to tell just by listening. The whole point is that it's kind of stealth. They sound at home on both sides of the line, without the audience clocking that they're singing in the quote-unquote wrong land for them. Because of the, singer's choice aspect to this Fach, I don't really have a good example role here. So instead, I'll give examples of two roles that can be sung either by a mezzo or a soprano without transposition of any of the music. Cendrillon in Massenet's Cendrillon, and Mother in Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel. Yes, there are other roles sung by both sopranos and mezzos, like Rosina in Barber of Seville or Donna Elvira in Don Giovanni. But both those roles have optional transpositions of the arias, meaning that the sopranos sing their arias in higher keys, and the mezzos sing them in lower keys. So the music isn't exactly the same, and I'm therefore not counting it as full stealth mode Fach switching here. Ooh, that was hard to explain and made my brain explode. Alright, on to coloratura mezzo-sopranos. Okay, on to the more traditionally accepted Fächer. I say that as though this Fach existed in the Handbuch der Oper. It doesn't. A coloratura mezzo, or Rossini mezzo, is the lightest type of mezzo, with both agility and flexibility all the way to the top of their range, but the mezzo warmth at the bottom. The roles they sing do demand a lot of coloratura, and often big leaps to exciting high notes, just like coloratura soprano roles do, but with the distinguishing feature of a lower tessitura. That means the whole role sits lower in the voice in general than comparable coloratura soprano roles. Unlike coloratura sopranos, coloratura mezzos, in general, are more comfortable around the middle of their register than at the top, whereas coloratura sopranos often feel like they're just like waiting for the aria to finish so that they can sing the exciting high note that they're looking forward to at the end, because that's what they're really excited about. Yes, I speak from experience here. Once upon a time, that was me. Coloratura mezzos often play the comic heroine type of role you might find in Rossini or even Vivaldi's operas, who sit somewhere between the like sassy maid type character and the ingenue type character in terms of personality. But they may also sing quite a few roles originally written for castrati, as well as some of the lighter lyric mezzo roles, or even some of the lower soubrette roles. There is wiggle room here, and you will see that is a theme throughout all of the mezzo repertoire. Good examples of coloratura mezzo roles include, and I'm just gonna stick to Rossini here, because let's be honest, his roles are just the best examples of this Fach that exist: Angelina, or Cinderella, in La Cenerentola, and Isabella in L'Italiana in Algeri. Lyric mezzo-soprano. Lyric mezzos tend not to have quite as much natural agility in their voices as coloratura mezzos do, but they do share a lot of repertoire. In general, though, these voices are at least a little bigger than coloratura mezzos. They often have a very warm and even sort of like gooey color to the sound, and some even have a very unique quality at the bottom that can make them sound, to some ears, almost sad. Again, though, that's not true of all lyric mezzos. It's really becoming clear just how unrigid this rigid system of boxes actually is. This Fach is the one that we associate most with trouser roles, but again, pretty much every type of mezzo has done at least some of those. We interrupt this program to bring you an operatic news bulletin. Oh crap, I have never done an Opera Explained short defining trouser roles. Trouser roles, pants roles, or roles en travesti all refer to the phenomenon where mezzos or sopranos, who are usually women, play male characters. Some of these roles, particularly the ones sung by coloratura mezzos, were originally written for castrati, or people who underwent castration before puberty to prevent the voice dropping into the lower register. As you can imagine, this fell way out of favor by the end of the 18th century. Not all trouser roles were written for castrati though, and were often designed simply to be performed in what we might now call drag. What operatic terms would you like me to define next? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and I will see you right now in the continuation of this video. We now return to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, what were we talking about? Lyric mezzos. Because of the sheer number of trouser roles in this Fach's repertoire, it's very common that young mezzos of all types, but particularly lyric mezzos, have to learn to quote-unquote walk like a man in opera school. This often means changing the center of gravity when they walk, shifting their whole gait or posture when sitting or standing, or even walking around with some rolls of socks in their pants to see what it feels like. It's a whole thing. In the vague future times when a large-scale production is sensible to do again and the Don Carlo that I was cast in starts back up, I'll be playing Thibaut, which is a trouser role for lyric sopranos. And since I have never done a trouser role before, I'll probably have to ask a mezzo friend to like teach me those secrets to help me perform this repertoire. Good examples of lyric mezzo roles include Carmen in Carmen and Hansel in Hansel and Gretel. Hansel is a pants role, Carmen isn't, though Carmen's wearing pants are sexy AF. Comic mezzo-sopranos. Okay, so again, this isn't like really a Fach, but I do know a lot of people whose CVs are sort of defined by these roles, and these amazing artists deserve their own mention here. Another weakness of the Fach system? Maybe. Am I now just adding things to better demonstrate the weaknesses of this system? Also maybe. Doesn't mean I'm not right though. Like this video down below if you agree. Or like, if you don't. that works too. Comic mezzo-sopranos don't usually have a specific like vocal structure that separates them from other types of mezzos. Instead, they often have a really unique, almost like fun to listen to color, a voice that makes them particularly suited to the comedically haughty and snobby mezzo roles you might find as supporting characters in ensemble operas, or as one of the older mezzo characters in Gilbert and Sullivan pieces. Most importantly, these singers must be extremely funny, which is what makes them so in demand for these roles, and is the fundamental reason why they often end up niching down to this type. Not a Fach, perhaps, but I would just be leaving out a whole subset of amazing mezzos without it. And this is my video, so I'll do what I want. Good examples of comic mezzo roles include Zita in Gianni Schicchi and Marcellina in Nozze di Figaro. Dramatic mezzo-sopranos. Okay, we're at the home stretch now. Dramatic mezzos have the biggest voices of all the true mezzos. These voices can easily soar over a giant orchestra, no matter what part of their register they're singing in. And because of the breadth of the sound and the often darker colors in their voices, these people often end up playing either 1, witches and other evil characters, or 2, mothers and old women. That's sort of their character type, with the occasional goddess thrown in there too. Side note, dramatic mezzos are less likely to play pants roles than other mezzos, but that definitely doesn't mean they can't. A lot of the dramatic mezzo-soprano repertoire comes from the German Romantic operas of composers like the Richards, Strauss, and Wagner. But Verdi wrote a lot of really cool music for this voice type too, if big in German isn't your operatic jam. Dramatic mezzos usually don't have the agility that coloratura mezzos do, which is often sort of the trade-off for having a voice that massive. And they often do have fewer high notes too, which is why the dot is lower on my handy-dandy chart. Yeah, that's usually the trade-off. The lighter the voice, the more agile it is, with more high notes. And the heavier the voice, the bigger the voice, the more massive it is, the less agile it is, with maybe fewer high notes. Again, lots of exceptions. Good examples of dramatic mezzo roles include Azucena in Trovatore and Amneris in Aida. Okay then, let's talk about contraltos. Now, there are arguably 3 major types of contralto: coloratura, lyric, and dramatic, as in mezzos. But the whole category is so rare that there isn't a lot of repertoire designed especially with those voices in mind. And those roles that are explicitly written for contraltos are often sung by mezzos anyway. Sorry, contraltos. What you have to know about contraltos is just this, that the range expected of a contralto is similar to that of a mezzo, but even lower. And in fact, almost exactly lines up with the range of a countertenor, the highest type of tenor. Though some contralto roles do go all the way up to the B5. That's pretty high. As for contralto role examples that are usually not also done by mezzos, Erda in Das Rheingold and Madame Flora in the medium. See, I did it. A note about non-operatic mezzos. I got quite a few comments on my last video asking about non-operatic voice types, and can I do a video talking about those? And the answer is kinda no. You see, operatic voice types are the only voice types that have any formal classifications in terms of range or color that I can talk about without dissecting individual voices. Like, sure, if I listen to person A sing jazz, I could hear specific things about their voice that differentiate them from person B and might indicate what Fach they might be if they sang opera. But the vocabulary I would use to define those differences isn't codified and is often unique, both to the voice of the individual singer being discussed and to the person listening to them and analyzing their voice. I just can't make blanket statements about all pop mezzos or all Broadway sopranos or about how those voices function, the way I do in this series about Operafächer. And this isn't meant to throw any shade to the wonderful videos talking about famous singers and their voice types. You can do this individually, person by person, but there is no system. And since my videos talk about the systems without examples of singers, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. Whether you're a musical theater mezzo or an alto in choir generally depends more on what you can bill yourself as, or where you fit as compared to the voices around you. Heck, determining whether or not you're a Broadway belter has less to do with Fach and more to do with the answer to the question, are you physically capable of belting or not? Sure, you're more statistically likely to be able to belt easily if your voice is structured more like a mezzo than, say, a light lyric coloratura, but for most people, it is a learnable skill, just with like varying degrees of it coming naturally to you. Basically, I think the place to go for answers about your personal non-operatic Fach is kinda not the internet. YouTube can tell you all about the formal rigid boxes, separating the fächer in opera, of course, but no random internet person can tell you where the formal rigid boxes lie in other genres because there are no formal rigid boxes. The best they can do is look at these people singing in other genres and then slot them into the operatic fächer, which is a strategy and kind of works, but is also like, I don't know, I think it's kind of arbitrary. It's up to you how useful that is. In pop, jazz, Broadway, whatever, there is only the answer to the question, what does this single individual voice do and how is it comparable to other people? Of course, this has its pluses and negatives. The opera world developed this system to protect singers from abuse, pressure, and overwork. And that's great. But it's also pigeonholed people into tiny little boxes too, which is not so great. Boxes are wonderful for organizing your desk drawer, and like, up to you whether they're as useful for organizing your humans. This chart does not accurately represent the complexities of mezzo, Zwischenfach, and contralto voices. It's just too limited. But if I showed you the more genuine spread of voices from the chart, it looks like this, and that definitely doesn't help anyone. And that's it for mezzos and contraltos. Drop your favorite mezzo or contralto in the comments below if you like. And remember, if you were looking for a joyful little corner of the internet where we could learn about opera, disability, queerness, cats, and tea, you have found it, and if you weren't looking for it, you have found it anyway. So go hit that subscribe button and ring the little bell so you never miss a video. Keep the comment section full of joy and light, scratchity, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello, darling. Woo. I feel like today's look is kind of like sexy grandma. What do y'all think? Shaky, 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 shaky. Oh, no. Vroom, vroom.